with Clarity Medical Private Limited for 3 years as a marketing executive, and further to that he was at IIT Delhi as a technical associate with Bot Lab Dynamics, and he has also worked with DRDO DPAS for some time. So he will talk to us about valuation and pricing strategies for our technology. So this is something we've been, struggling with, that how to, price your technology. So he will tell us about that. Sir, I invite you to say a few words before we start.
Very good morning, all of you. Over 50, 60 years back, I was also a young person like you people. So I'm a product of this university. I'm a microbiologist by profession. And incidentally, like when they were mentioning about Dr. Giri Sahni, I mean, I don't have anything to tell about myself, so I'll speak more about Dr. Giri Sahni. आपने CSIR की labs तो सुनी है ना बेटे, right? उनका एक director होता है. There are 40 labs which are set up by the government of India, right? So इन सब का जो एक head होता है उसे कहते हैं Director General, right? So Giri Sahni was lucky enough, or he deserved also, to become the Director General of CSIR. और उनके ऊपर सिर्फ Prime Minister होता है. He reports only to Prime Minister. So वो position है बेटा. सारे हिंदुस्तान की जो science है, actual science. So Girish Sahni को मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ कि we were class fellows. We did BSc and MSc microbiology together. Then like चला गया वो बेंगलोर में PhD करने. I went to England for my PhD. फिर we were together in USA. We came back. He joined MTech. I joined Punjab University. Right? I don't know story which he was going to tell, but being a very good friend of mine, academia में लोग कहते हैं पैसा नहीं है ज़्यादा, तो हम तो इंडस्ट्री की जॉब करेंगे. बेटे बिलीव मी, मैं भी आप जैसा था कि मैं भाग रहा था कि मुझे एकेडेमिया में नहीं आना. ओके, बट दैट टाइम हम अपने फादर ने जो कह दिया वही होता था. तो आई हैड टू जॉइन द एकेडमिक्स. और आज मैं कहता हूँ कि भी दैट्स द बेस्ट थिंग माय फादर डिड टू मी. ये एक ऐसी चीज़ है बेटे, मैं आपको बता नहीं सकता. राइट, पैसा इतना है कि आप आराम से ज़िंदगी निकल जाती है. बट इफ़ यू वांट टू अर्न मनी, वो भी पैसा इसी में ही है बेटे. वी पीपल आर वेरी इंटेलिजेंट, ओनली यू गॉट टू यूज योर ब्रेन. हम पेटेंट्स की बात करते हैं कि हमारा पेटेंट हो बेटे, नॉट नेसेसरली. अगर किसी का पेटेंट भी है, ऑफ पेटेंट हो गया, you can exploit that. India, can I have 5 minutes? But just I want. Clot burst से जब वो हार्ट अटैक हो जाता है ना बेटे, हार्ट अटैक होता है, इमीडिएटली रश टू हॉस्पिटल. हॉस्पिटल वाले आपके एक इंजेक्शन लगाते हैं, उसका नाम होता है TPA, प्लाज्मिनोजन एक्टिवेटर. तो वो जो है कि वो क्लॉट को इमीडिएट डिसॉल्व कर देता है. इट्स अ वंडरफुल थिंग. बट उसका ही एक डिस्टेंट सब्स्टिट्यूट है जिसे हम कहते हैं स्ट्रेप्टोकाइनेस. ये TPA जो है हमारी बॉडी में होता है. ओके, स्ट्रेप्टोकाइनेस इज प्रोड्यूस्ड बाय बैक्टीरियम. ओके, अगर बैक्टीरिया से प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है तो वी कैन प्रोड्यूस एन अमाउंट ऑफ इट. बायोरिएक्टर्स में लगा जितना बना दिया. तो ये टेक्नोलॉजी 1970 के नज़दीक की होगी बेटे, मे बी अर्लियर देन दैट, पर 1990 में ये ऑफ पेटेंट हो गई. इंडिया के अंदर TPA इज़ वेरी एक्सपेंसिव, इट्स वेरी एक्सपेंसिव. तो इंडिया गवर्नमेंट ने कहा कि क्या हम स्ट्रेप्टोकाइनेस जो कि यही काम करता है बट इट्स गॉट सम साइड इफेक्ट्स, क्या हम उसको लार्ज स्केल पे यहाँ प्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं. सो दैट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी इज गिवन टू डॉक्टर गिरी साहनी समवेयर इन 1990. ओके, कि ऑफ पेटेंट है, हम इसे इंडिया में बनाते हैं. तो ही मैनेज दैट थिंग फॉर अबाउट 5 or 6 years के अंदर बना के उसको ही प्रोड्यूस इट, और उसको कैडिला को बेचा फॉर 1 करोड़ 1 करोड़ के अंदर. ओके, सो जब वो चीज़ सेल होती है उसमें से मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द अमाउंट कम्स बैक टू द लैब. कुछ इंस्टीट्यूट ले जाता है, कुछ लैब सिर्फ 50%, ये मैं एग्जैजरेट कर रहा हूँ, 50% दे दिया इंस्टीट्यूट. 50% जो है लैब में आया। उसने काम किया, उसके रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स थे, उसका टेक्निकल स्टाफ था, वो सब में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होता है, उसकी डिस्क्रिप्शन पे किसने कितना काम किया देना है। इसके बड़े साइड इफ़ेक्ट्स हैं कि वो क्लॉट तो डिजोल्व करता है बट हेमाटोमास हो जाते हैं बॉडी के अंदर ना, तो वो हमें नहीं चाहिए। तो गिरीश मेड अनदर प्रोडक्ट which was sold for 5 crores to another company which was known as Shasun Technologies. That was bought over by some other company, 5 crore के अंदर. Then he further refined it third generation which was sold for 25 crores. And an MOU had been signed for the fourth version which was as good as TPA for 125 CR. Right? So एक ही आदमी पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोडक्ट डायरेक्टर जनरल तक चला गया। सो बेटे आप लोग भी वही पहुंच सकते हो कि आपको बाहर नहीं देखना कि भी मुझे बाहर के लोग जैसे कि इट इज़ ए होम ग्रोन प्रोडक्ट गिरिसानी। सो आपको मैं जो एग्जांपल दे रहा हूँ बेटे वो सिर्फ इसलिए दे रहा हूँ कि भी यहीं से ही निकला था और इसमें टीचिंग के अंदर आई मीन बहुत ही बढ़िया प्रोफेशन है। रिसर्च यू आर ए फ्रीलांसर, कोई भी रिसर्च करनी है आपने आप उस पर करिए, फॉजस गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया देते हैं। सो उसके साथ रिसर्च में आपके पास ये मैंने मॉनेटरी साइड भी दिखाई है बेटे आपको। और उसका जो प्रोडक्ट था तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने एस्टिमेट किया कि ऑन एनुअल बेसिस 35,000 करोड़ का फायदा होता है डायरेक्टली या इनडायरेक्टली। जब उसको मार्केट में आया उसकी प्राइस थी 1100 रुपये और ये जो था टीपीए वगैरह था ये 3-4 हज़ार रुपये था। प्राइसेस स्लैश हो गई सारी और 1100 रुपये की रिक्शा वाला भी अफोर्ड कर सकते। उसका एक सेंटेंस था कि रुपिंदर मैं रिक्शा वाले लिए बनानी एंड नाउ द थिंग इज कि रिक्शा वाला भी अफोर्ड कर सकता है। सो आई मीन वी लॉस्ट हिम लास्ट ईयर बिकॉज ऑफ हार्ट अटैक, वो भी एक ट्रेजेडी कहानी है। बट प्रतीक उनका बेटा है, प्रतीक में भी वो स्पार्क्स हैं वो चीज़ के, मगर थोड़ा सा इसके कान खींचने वाले हैं जो मैं कर रहा हूँ आजकल इसके। ठीक है, आई एम जस्ट जोकिंग। आई मीन ओवर टू यू बेटे।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू सो वेरी मच फॉर योर काइंड वर्ड्स। So hi everyone, I am going to talk today about valuation and pricing strategies for technologies, specifically around the concept of technology transfer. I'll bring you through the basic concept of technology transfer, going to why valuation matters, how to actually do valuation, some process and some case examples before concluding. So first we have a small theoretical bit. You all know what technology transfer is, right? So how many of you are aware of the process involved in technology transfer? For example, once the technology is created to a certain level that an industry might want to acquire it, what is the process? Are any of you aware of that?
We had a few lectures on the licensing agreements and how that goes about and things like that.
जी,
So they have had an exposure to it, but yes, you can.
ठीक है, thank you so much. All right, I'll just move forward with it. It involves first of all protecting your invention through IP protection, then going for understanding the market, how the market behaves, what your particular technology, when it's made into a product, how it will affect the market, how much earning potential there will be, how much social impact there can be from a particular invention. Taking that into consideration, you make a valuation of your technology. That valuation you present to a company, you go on to negotiations, and whatever is agreed, that will eventually begin the tech transfer process. Major key actors in this field are universities, of course, where the technologies are created a lot of the times on the academia side. Invariably, tech transfer offices are also involved in this process, because a lot of times I have seen in my own in my own experience is that the inventor themselves or their team have somewhat limited exposure towards the industry, towards companies that are in need of the product. Of course, there are exceptions. There are quite a few exceptions, in fact, but the majority, I'd say that they are somewhat lacking in exposure to large-scale industries. That's where tech transfer offices come into play. Tech transfer offices are constantly engaged with industry side as well as with academia side, and we bridge the gap between the two. Of course, industry partners are very much necessary for a tech transfer to take place, because without that, who else is going to take the technology, right? Moving on. Valuation of a patent or a technology is very key, not just for tech transfer but also for other factors. For example, it enables informed negotiations, right, and fair royalty rates. If you have a valuation, if you know for a fact what the valuation of your technology is, then you can make a fair assessment on what the royalty rate should be, as in the impact of the technology and how much remuneration the inventing institute and inventors themselves should be entitled to. Otherwise, it will be much more guesswork than what is ideal. Secondly, it helps attract investors and partners. This moves towards the company side. Company valuation, companies' technologies should be evaluated, their patents should be evaluated, so that investments and stuff can happen. Mergers and acquisitions are require valuation of all assets on a very deep level. So from the technology side, technology valuation for tech transfer, it is generally going to help you in negotiations and having a strong negotiating position, so that a company might not be able to take advantage of you. You will have a strong negotiating position. There are multiple valuation approaches, which I will go into in some amount of detail after this. But two broad categories of such are quantitative approaches and qualitative approaches. Quantitative approaches involve actually calculating various key factors that you use to actually value your technologies. These include the cost of development, the market scenario, as well as income-based methods. I'll go into detail about these in a couple of minutes. Qualitative approaches involve looking at more subjective factors, such as the technology readiness level, technological feasibility, and legal strength of your patent, as well as market potential. See, whenever we talk about potential, it is more about projections, and projections are essentially guesstimations based on some key variables that you know, but they are all estimations. So that is why this particular approach is put into the qualitative section and not quantitative section. So the cost approach, the value equals production or reproduction or replacement costs. That is to say, how much money or finances will be required to reproduce a technology from scratch by a third party. So that would be equivalent to the most basic form of valuation. Second one is market approach, where we compare it with similar transactions, similar technologies that are already in the market. However, since patents are all about uniqueness, any technology that is out there is not going to match exactly with a technology that is being developed in an institute. So what it means is that there is still some estimation required to evaluate the novelty of your incremental technology, incremental advancement in technology as well. And the third, of course, is income approach, which revolves around calculating discounted cash flows and royalties forecast. It's all about forecasting here. So the cost approach in more detail involves research and development costs, the direct expenses associated with creating an innovation. That involves the equipment, the personnel, manpower, the indirect costs such as rents and utilities, all of the costs associated with your particular project go into that. This is the most basic way of valuing a technology. Patent filing and execution expenses, prosecution expenses, opportunity costs, and reproduction versus replacement costs. These are all required to do a cost approach valuation. Now, it has a main disadvantage that it fails to account for the future economic benefits the patent might generate. For example, a technology might be developed using, let's say, 10 lakh rupees, right? However, it might generate a revenue, a total revenue in the market of 10 crore rupees. So, a valuation from this particular method will be undervaluing your technology by a huge margin. So, that is one of the main disadvantages of this technique. However, this is a good starting point for any valuation process. Once you do this, then you add other factors such as markets. The second method is market cost approach. Here you look at recent licensing deals, examining royalty rates and other terms from comparable agreements. For example, if I have a technology that I am developing, any other technology that could be considered similar to it, right? I try to find information about what terms and conditions there were for the transfer of that technology, what sort of revenue that technology in the market has generated. So, I use that as a base and estimate my novelty in my own new technology and then add on to that. So, that is one of the approaches. Patent acquisitions, you can also possibly find out the prices, the licensing costs of patents that have been transferred in your particular field. And industry standards, generally we have studies that show typical valuation ranges for patents in specific technological fields, not for specific technologies but for fields in general, which can give you general trends in your particular field of research. Now, the challenge here is that finding truly comparable transactions are quite difficult, as patents by their very nature define uniqueness in any technology. So, that uniqueness is not going to be available anywhere in the world. So, there is still some estimation involved here. Also, secondly, generally speaking, all these agreements, tech transfers from that I told you about, that are comparable to your technology, they are generally very confidential. So, finding that information can be difficult unless you have a very large network of people that you talk to. So, networking is quite important in basically any field. So, build your networks. The last valuation methodology I am going to tell you about is income approach. Here you do some revenue forecasting, estimate the future sales or licensing income of a technology. When it comes to market, you imagine what that particular technology as a product might generate in revenue. Again, that will happen with products that are already there that your technology aims to replace, right? You can use that as a starting place and project and then project. Discount rate determination. Now, this segment of the approach relates to the falling value of your technology as time passes. So, for example, if my patent is worth X today, my technology is worth X amount of rupees today, every year that X value is going to go down based on the age of the technology, emergence of other technologies, redundancy of the the fact that my technology is becoming more and more redundant based on new technologies that are arriving. So, those take into account the discount rate determination. Also, any new product coming into the market inherently carries a risk for the companies that are going to market it, that are going to sell it, because a product is generally going to be untested because of its novelty, right? If you have a technology that is completely novel, that is just like disruptive technology, then there is a huge amount of risk for any company that wants to commercialize the technology. So, that risk also is able to reduce the current value of your technology, because the risk is not to be borne by the inventor, but the company that is putting in the investment to commercialize the technology. So that is also an important part. Also, economic life assessment determines how long the patent will generate economic benefits. You might consider that a patent's life is 20 years, right? However, in a lot of cases, especially in electronics and these fields, the patent's life is invalid, is not relevant, because the technology is so fast moving. The advances in technologies are so fast moving that before the 20 years are up, a new generation of technologies will already replace it. So the active economic benefits that a patent might produce in those particular fields can be very less compared to a patent's life, right? So economic life assessment is also very important in this particular methodology. So there is a formula for this which is fairly complicated, and it has a lot of assumptions involved in there, right? There are chapters and books written on discounted cash flow methodologies, and the technical aspects of that calculation is beyond the scope of this particular presentation. So if you have a curiosity for it, there are many resources online. Just straight up Google is going to be able to tell you a lot of information on how to calculate discounted cash flows, which is the income approach. Now this one is a client based market valuation, right? So here क्या होता है कि ये बोला जाता है कि आप जो आपको पे कर रहे हैं, आप उनसे उतना ही पैसा ले सकते हैं जितना उनके पास है, राइट? जितना जेब में पैसा है उतना ही पैसा आप ले सकते हैं, कहीं और से मैजिकली आएगा नहीं पैसा. सो दिस टेक्स इनटू दिस पर्टिकुलर वैल्यूएशन टेक्स दैट इनटू अकाउंट. So if a company is unwilling to go to your asking price, they might be a small company, they might just not have a lot of confidence in your technology at the start, right? Then you might want to be able to be flexible enough to meet their demands or negotiate and reach a more agreeable settlement for the company. Because at the end of the day, if a company does not choose to commercialize or transfer your technology, right, and you don't necessarily have other avenues at the time, then you have not generated any revenue, as opposed to a smaller amount of revenue than you may have expected by negotiating and giving in to the demands of a company. This is not always the best approach, but in certain cases it may be. I'll give you an example later on about that. So this valuation methodology also explains how a certain technology can be priced differently for different companies, depending on their scale, depending on their scope, depending on their ability to pay your licensing fees. Qualitative factors that are somewhat more intangible are listed here. First is the technology strength and maturity level, which is generally accepted as the TRL level. You all know what TRL levels are, right? Technology readiness levels. So they range from 1 through 9, 1 being the basic conceptualization of a particular project, going up to the commercialization of their technology, with various stages in between. That is one of the qualitative factors that affect the pricing of a technology. Generally speaking, low TRL levels are going to attract lower levels of licensing fees. Higher the TRL level, typically higher the licensing fees, right? Second is patent breadth, enforceability, and remaining life. I think everyone is aware that what patent remaining life means. Patent's remaining life means a 20-year period for the patent. However much time has been done in development, after that you subtract that, and whatever is left is the patent's remaining life. Enforceability. Now, a patent which is extremely general in nature in its main claims can potentially be overturned, can potentially be challenged by a company that states that this patent is should be invalidated. They can go to the courts and get your patent invalidated. So if you have more specific claims, among many other strategies, your patent's enforceability becomes higher. That is to say, if anyone tries to challenge your patent, or if anyone tries to violate your patent, then you have much greater legal protection by going through the courts. That also provides a confidence in the licensing companies that your patent can actually protect the technology in case someone steals it or tries to invalidate it. Patent breadth is again about the fact whether or not your patent or your technology is general, in protectability. Again, if your claims are very general, then its patent breadth is going to be large. So there is a balancing act between enforceability and patent breadth. The more general your claims are, the more leeway you have with creating a technology that can be protected. However, the more general your claims are, the less enforceability it carries. So there is a balancing act that you have to make here, and there is no one who can say what exact tipping point, what exact fulcrum you should follow. It is up to each and every inventor on themselves. Third part is market size, growth potential, and competition. So now the market size can be calculated through TAM, SAM, and SOM methodology, where TAM is the total addressable market. Do any of you have an idea what TAM, SAM, and SOM is? Could you please?
TAM is basically the total addressable market
Ji.
for the product, which includes the global market, is the total market for the product. SAM is the market that we are trying to conquer.
Okay.
And SOM is the market that will actually be able to conquer.
So that is a very good summarization. Thank you so much for answering. That is very good summarization, but I'll give you a small bit more detail. TAM is the total addressable market. That is to say, your product or your technology, the entire market that can potentially use or buy your product, regardless of whether or not you as a company can reach them, regardless of that. So what my friend said, the global market, typically TAM refers to global market, right? Serviceable available market, which is SAM. Now this is the slice of the total market that you can theoretically reach. For example, I have, let's say, a drone, right? That technology might have that technology is globally, there are many buyers globally, right? But I, as a company here that's operating only in India, can only reach maybe people in India, right? So the global market is out of my hands for now. However, I can theoretically reach everyone in India, right? So the total available market that I can potentially reach is the SAM. Now serviceable obtainable market is the part of SAM that I can actually reach, given my resources, given my market penetration at the time. So that SOM is the most realistic value of the market that you can actually acquire. The rates of TAM versus SOM in percentage can vary wildly depending on the size of my technology and the sector of my technology, right? How barriers to entry across geographic planes can easily stop me from, let's say, operating just in India versus operating in multiple countries or globally. So these are some of the considerations that you might want to think about in the market domain. Now every market has a growth potential. If any one of you has ever read any market research reports, you'll see that many times there's written this market is growing at a CAGR of 5%, right? So that is the growth rate of a particular field. This also is applicable to stocks, bonds, securities as well. CAGR is basically a growth rate, right? It's agnostic of technologies and markets. It's the growth rate of any asset, right? However, in this case, the growth potential of a field of research of a market can easily affect the overall price of a particular technology, right? Large growth potential markets will tend to have low saturation, right? So if the market is very saturated with products, then companies might say that this is already saturated. Why would I jump into this pool where I don't have much of a opportunity to actually make money from a product, because the market is saturated. With high growth potential, saturation of a market is somewhat low, can be considered to be somewhat low, right? So a company might say that there is huge growth potential here, I can still make money even if there are other players in the market that are my competitors. Bringing us to the last point, which is competition. One must always consider that what their competition is doing, what technologies are already out there, what sort of revenue they are generating, what are their drawbacks, what does that technology, what does that product not do well. If I can, as an inventor, create a technology that bridges the gap between what is available and what is needed, then that gives me a very good chance of making a technology that is transferable. So these are qualitative factors. As you might have noticed, these are factors that are quite subjective in nature. There is no simple number or a calculation that will give you the exact answer. There is a lot of estimation involved here. So that is why this is qualitative factors and not quantitative. Now coming to the main segment, I think, is pricing and licensing strategies. We are all aware of what exclusive versus non-exclusive licensing is, right? Okay, so exclusive licensing means that if I have a technology, I give it to a company and I do not give that technology, transfer that technology to any company enforceable by the law. Within the technology transfer agreement, technology licensing agreement, it is written that the technology that I have created will only remain with a particular chosen company. Non-exclusive licensing is exactly the opposite. I can license my technology to multiple companies. Straightforward enough, right? On the surface, yes, that is true. However, I can make a technology licensing agreement in such a way that I transfer my technology to only one company, but only within a specific area. For example, within India, I will only transfer my technology to company A. In, let's say, Germany, is going to be company B. Company A cannot operate in Germany, cannot compete with company B. So it's a mix of exclusive and non-exclusive, though technically it still comes in the non-exclusive category. That brings me to the next point, which is geographical limitations. Like I just mentioned, I can assign different companies. I can transfer my technology to companies operating only in specific geographical areas. They cannot operate outside of those geographical areas with my technology. That's what that means. Now, pricing and payment strategies. There could be upfront payments, which is a straight up lump sum amount, which is called a technology licensing amount, which is the upfront amount. We have multiple types of royalties. Two of them are running royalties and fixed royalties. So running royalties are, you might have heard that a technology was transferred for X amount with 5% royalty on X factory prices. So what that means is that the technology, whatever products are sold, let's say the company sells 100 products of that particular technology that they've taken from me, right? 5% of that price, selling price, will come to me, as in my institution, as royalty, which is calculated every half year or every full year, depending on the terms of the contract. That is very much sales dependent. So if there are low sales, then I get low royalty. If there are high sales, I get high royalty. Obvious enough? The next point is fixed royalties. Now, fixed royalties is somewhat interesting. Let us say I, as an inventor, don't want to take the risk of low sales from a company, because I cannot control the marketing and sales networks of the company itself. So I tell the company that I will sign the technology licensing agreement, but in this case every year regardless of sales you will pay me X amount of money, right? The risk here for me is, the good thing about this strategy for me is that if the company has very little sales or no sales, I will still be entitled to a specific amount. The risk here for me is that if the company skyrockets its sales, right, I am still entitled to only that amount. Any extra amount that I might have received is just not mine. So you have to think about your own technology's success rate in the market. If you are very confident of your technology's success in the market, then running royalties might be a good strategy.
Question regarding like fluctuations in share market.
Sorry?
Suppose in case of Valuation is being acquired by one of the top brands
Ji.
and it's in the launching phase from that company and the share market drops down suddenly. Then what will be the impact of like launching? It will be successful or will be there?
That is an interesting question actually, because you are linking stock market with product sales, right? So there is indirect linkages at best between stock markets and product sales. Falling markets for securities may indicate a lessening of the spending potential of the populace, which might affect your product sales negatively. Might, I said, I am not saying that it definitely will. However, there is no direct linkage between stock drop and product sales, direct linkage. So in effect, if the stock market starts crashing, right, and your technology gives a product that is quite basic and necessary for life, like for example a new type of grain or atta, right, then it shouldn't affect your product. But if it's a lifestyle product which is not necessary for life, but it's a quality of life improvement for the upper echelon, for the middle class, then it might see a drop in sales. It very much depends on what kind of correlations you are able to build between stock market and the success of a particular product or product category.
Fixed royalty and running royalty you mentioned. Can we write like that, okay, I get a fixed royalty of so and so, but in case the sales are this, whichever is more. So
Yeah, that is possible. I was going to make the next point. That is definitely possible. In fact, you can have a different variations of these royalties. You might say that for the first 5 years, I will be paid 25,000 rupees a year. I'm just taking a number out of a hat, right? Regardless of sales volume, you pay me 25,000 rupees a year. For year 3 and so for year 4 and above, right, you pay me 10% of the sales or whatever number. That will allow me to gauge the success rate of the product for the first 3 years, and only then I will commit to the ups and downs of a market, right? So first fixed, then market. You can have it the opposite way as well. You can have a very small percentage based royalty for the first 3 years and have a large fixed amount based on the performance of the product in the first few years. All up to the contract, right? So there is no specific rule what terms you need to have in a contract other than a few basic necessities. You can have many terms as long as both parties agree to it, and then it will become a legally enforceable agreement, right? So it's all up to the creativity of the inventor, of their lawyers, of the company, because the company will also try to maximize its profits. So there's more of a clash of different interests than a collaboration, right? At least there is some amount of clashing involved. You can have both. Typically it's price based.
Normally it's on the cost, right, or the
Sales price. You can technically have both. Now here, if you have a profit based royalty, then there's no way for anyone to say whether or not they're actually giving you based on profits. A company might just say that my 90% of my product's price is basically the manufacturing price or something, however they are able to justify it. So the royalty will only be on a very tiny percentage of the price.
But if practically, I'm sure this industry also. Industries की problem नहीं है, which is a fact. अब net sale होगा जो बातें कर रहे profits की ना. Industry में लोन लिए होते हैं बेटे, thousands of crores. तो उसमें आप फंस जाते हैं. अब तो लगता है आपको बड़ी चीज सेल हो रही है, वो कह रहे हैं पर मैंने तो बैक मेरा ये पड़ा. Right? मैंने तो शेयर होल्डर्स को पैसे नहीं दिए, 10 साल से रेस नहीं किए. So this information which Pratik is giving you on this 7-day program, it's just to enlighten you, will make you aware. ये क्या चीज़ है? आपने ये एकदम प्रोफेशन नहीं है आपका बेटा, but you should be aware of चीज़ें क्या हैं.
Thank you so much. Like Professor Tiwari just said, this is the starting point potentially. If you look into these things in more depth, you will get much more information. You can look into case studies of previous successful tech transfers, and you will be able to find a nearly unlimited number of variations on all of these strategies. You can have a mix and match, whatever suits you, right? But both parties have to agree, obviously. Last point here is milestone payments, wherein a company acquiring your technology will not simply pay the entire fee upfront, but they'll pay part of the fee at milestone number 1. Let's say in the pharmaceutical side, part of the fee is going to be, let's say, 20% when the know-how is transferred, 20% when, let's say, the clinical trial starts or the formulation is created, 20% when something else happens, based on milestones. That can also be mixed with royalty payments. When the total upfront cost based on milestones is done and the sales start happening, then royalty will kick in. That can be done as well. Now a few examples. I have 4 major examples showing many of the concepts that I have mentioned. The ideal scenario here. So recently I transferred a technology entitled IoT enabled ICU patient monitoring system from one of the CSIR labs, right, to an industry. We had multiple meetings. The technology was explained after due NDAs and everything. And the company side said that I am fine with this technology based on, dependent on the asking price. So separately I asked both parties what asking price you are comfortable with. Both of them were very close to their pricing thoughts. The inventor gave me a number like 10 lakh is good for me. This is what I'm thinking. The industry side told me that I'll be able to pay like 9 lakh rupees. So with a small amount of negotiation, we came to a very good conclusion. 10 lakh rupees was the amount, upfront amount, and 4% ex-factory price royalty. So this is basically the ideal scenario where all parties have very aligned interests. Now this here is a technology called the artificial breathing capability device. This was also transferred from our offices to 2 different companies, each for 4 lakh rupees. Ji sir. So this technology was created in part by Professor Manu Sharma of Punjab University Mechanical Department, as well as Professor Joseph Matthews of PGI and 2 other inventors, all from different organizations, right? This technology to each of the companies was transferred for 4 lakh rupees each. Now I delved into how they came up with the number of 4 lakh rupees, and I was also told to specifically tell you guys this, that we were 4 inventors. We thought 1 lakh rupees sabko mil jayega, and that was the theory behind, that was the reasoning behind the 4 lakh rupee amount, right? तो मैम कट लेने वाले तो बहुत हैं मैम, यूनिवर्सिटी भी है, गवर्नमेंट भी है.
So,
और टेक भी देगा.
Let's keep that down low, ma'am. Let's let that be a surprise when they make the technology.
but like I think the point that you told सबसे पहले, especially from pharma domain, क्योंकि हमारे किसमें बहुत investment हो जाता है.
Ji, my last one is going to be that exactly. But yes, please continue. Sorry to interrupt you.
I think let you finish and
जी.
then we can have more questions from them.
Ji, definitely.
मैंने इसके बारे में बताऊँ ना कि मार्केट में जो अवेलेबल है दैट इज सो एक्सपेंसिव.
जी.
कोविड के टाइम की बात है ना, फिर तब बनाया गया था तो ताकि पीपल कैन अफोर्ड इट. उसके लिए बड़ा ही हमने सिंपल सा बनाया है. मनु इज इन फैक्ट द कोऑर्डिनेटर ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी.
So the technology, I'll just give you a small brief. Ventilators are available in the market. COVID time में the requirement for ventilators, the demand was so insanely high that the market could not supply. Right? At the time, the simple thought came that why are ventilators so necessary? Higher order functions of a ventilator are not necessary for a COVID patient. You just need to force breathing at a certain rate, at a certain pressure. So they developed a machine. Have you ever heard of ambu bags? आपने कभी मूवीज टीवी शोज में कोई एम्बुलेंस देखी है जब एक बैग लगाते हैं मुंह पे और हाथ से प्रेस करते हैं बैग को? दैट्स कॉल्ड एन एम्बू बैग. दैट इज मैकेनिकली आप एयर फोर्स कर रहे हैं इनटू द सिस्टम ऑफ अ पेशेंट who cannot necessarily breathe themselves optimally. So this device, इसके अंदर एक एम्बू बैग लगा हुआ है. A tube goes into the patient's throat, or it can be a mask as well, and the machine automatically depresses an ambu bag to force breathing of a patient. It simulates the lower functions of a ventilator that is more than enough for most applications on a patient. So it's a simplified technology, it is a cheaper technology, and it is much more easily producible and marketable. So that was the theory behind this particular technology. Now then I asked regarding the pricing of the technology, what is the development cost of the technology? Was that taken into account when deciding the 4 lakh rupee amount? So I was told that it was given by the government of India. It was approximately 1 crore rupees of development cost. It was given by the government of India, not specifically to generate revenue for the government, but to enable a technology that is life saving. So that is one of the reasons why that 1 crore amount was not taken into consideration very thoughtfully to let the technology be transferred to multiple companies at a low rate, at an affordable rate. That was the theory here. Please.
हम कहते हैं गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया हमारी कुछ नहीं करती हमारे लिए. लुक एट द प्रोजेक्ट्स गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया गिव्स. 1 करोड़ रुपए देगी और गवर्नमेंट हमेशा ये कहती है कि हमें वापस कुछ नहीं चाहिए. साइंटिस्ट के पास भी पैसा तो है नहीं, गवर्नमेंट से आया, राइट? वो ये कह रही कि इससे वो कि यूनिवर्सिटी कैन अर्न, इन्वेंटर्स कैन अर्न, सो गवर्नमेंट डजंट वांट इट. तो ये जो चीज़ इसमें कहा है ना बेटे, लुक इट फ्रॉम ए पर्सपेक्टिव. मैं गवर्नमेंट का आदमी नहीं हूँ बेटे जी, ना ही किसी पॉलिटिक्स का आदमी, बट प्लीज थिंक अबाउट इट. आपको एम फार्मा के बाद जो स्कॉलरशिप मिलता है वेरी लिस्ट है, पोस्ट ऑफिस नहीं मिलता, कहाँ से आ रहा है? सो गवर्नमेंट और इन चीज़ों में काफ़ी इन्वेस्ट कर रही है. कभी ANRF के ऊपर उनका लेक्चर करवाई. तो जस्ट टू लेट यू नो कि बेटे हमें हर बार नेगेटिविटी से देखा ये गवर्नमेंट. सो इतना पैसा जो R&D पे आ रहा है बेटे सारा जो है उसको गवर्नमेंट कुछ वापस से मांगेगा. दैट्स लाइक पेटेंट भी करना है उसके लिए गवर्नमेंट पैसा देती है.
So I'll make one line out of this. Keep looking for grants. Keep looking for gaps in the market that will make actionable change, that will make significant change for the livelihoods of everyone. And keep looking at grants, because grants are essentially देन है आपके ऊपर, आप लीजिए ये पैसा, अगर आप गवर्नमेंट, अगर जो कमिटीज़ हैं वो आपके प्रोजेक्ट को अच्छा समझती हैं, आप लीजिए ये पैसा, उसका बनाइए कुछ, राइट, एंड डोंट थिंक अबाउट पेइंग इट बैक. यू विल पे द गवर्नमेंट बैक बाय सेविंग लाइव्स, यू विल पे द गवर्नमेंट बैक बाय इनेबलिंग मोर रिसर्च, एंड अपने प्रोडक्ट्स के सेल्स के अपने टैक्सेस के थ्रू पेमेंट हो जाएगा जी 10 साल के अंदर अंदर. डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट, जस्ट डू गुड वर्क. जी मैम, जस्ट लास्ट बिट्स हैं. थर्ड एग्जाम्पल हेयर इज रिलेटिंग टू द क्लाइंट बेस्ड वैल्यूएशन. सो दिस टेक्नोलॉजी इज अ वेरी बेसिक टेक्नोलॉजी. You may have seen cheek retractors that just open your mouth constantly, so a dentist can have access to your anterior and posterior mouth, right, cavity. So lighting systems are fairly inefficient when this thing is used. So the inventor just sort of attached a light to it. The ask for the technology was about 1 to 1.5 L. There was some variation there. The company came up and said that this technology does not seem to have much in the way of technological complexity, right? So I am unwilling to pay 1.5 lakh rupees asking price. I will pay 50,000 rupees and that's it. If you want to transfer it, go right ahead. I'll happy to do that. So I took that. This also was a technology, by the way, that I transferred. So I took that information, went to the institute, and they told me that what are the justifications for it. So I told them about the complexity as well, but I also raised the point that this was a 3-year-old technology, right? It had not been transferred and nobody seemed to have much of a interest in there. So I raised the point that a company is out there that's willing to take your technology. Your own efforts in the past have not been able to transfer the technology. So why not take this chance on a non-exclusive basis? If someone else shows up, please go right ahead and transfer it to whatever amount you want. But why not चक्का घुमाना क्यों ना शुरू करें? The institute, Sharda University actually, agreed to it. There you go. We have a very nice technology transfer for a small amount of money, understandably, but there is also a royalty being generated or will be generated within the next 6 months when the technology is scheduled to be launched.
Royalties time bound कितने साल के लिए या like
for the lifetime of the agreement, which is 5 years, and can be extended based on whatever. Now this here is a technology that's very close to my heart. तिवारी सर ने आपको सबको बताया है स्ट्रेप्टोकाइनेस के बारे में, which was developed. The PI was my father. Very capable team in his hands as well. तो इसके 3 generations अभी ट्रांसफर हुए हैं, ठीक है. Streptokinase as a technology has been available for a long time. The first generation that Dr. Sahani actually developed was a naturally synthesized streptokinase that was indigenous to India. First time streptokinase was actually made in India was through this. It was transferred to Cadila Pharma for an amount of 20 lakh rupees at 3.5% royalty.
but कब way back 20 lakh
Way back, that was in the 1990s.
तब 20 lakh was a big amount.
Mid 90s, yeah, before my time. Accounting for the rising inflation and everything, 20 lakh is not a small amount of money in today's terms. Anyway, so that was a fairly straightforward tech transfer. Next came the recombinant variant of the medication. That was the main medication that was able to reduce the cost of streptokinase significantly, so that रिक्शे वाला भी उसको afford कर सकता है, ठीक है, through recombinant techniques. That was transferred to Shasun Medical at 1 crore rupees at 5.5% royalty rates. This is all on formulation, right? इसके पीछे एक स्टोरी है. द पर्सन हु एक्चुअली वॉज इन द नेगोशिएशन, डॉक्टर नरेश कुमार, मैंने उनसे बात करी थी रिसेंटली इसके स्पेसिफिक्स के बारे में. तो द डायरेक्टर एट द टाइम ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ माइक्रोबियल टेक्नोलॉजी सेड, मेरे को 40 लाख रुपए में भी आप ये ट्रांसफर करा दो, मैं खुश हूँ. इंटरेस्टिंग. right? And then I was told कि the PI, Dr. Sani, while these both people were going for negotiations, Dr. Sani said 1.5 crore pitch करना please, and इन्होंने कर दिया. Negotiation करने के बाद 1 crore पे fix हुआ. So the original ask was 40 lakh rupees, and the technology transfer price was 1 crore rupees. उल्टा भी हो जाता है. डेयरिंग की जरूरत है थोड़ी सी, यू नो, एंड जस्टिफिकेशन की जरूरत है, बिकॉज एट द टाइम शासन मेडिकल के पर्सनल आस्क्ड फॉर ए जस्टिफिकेशन ऑफ दिस अमाउंट, एंड डॉक्टर नरेश ने मेरे को पर्सनली बोला कि चाहे दिन वहाँ पे अच्छा प्लेजेंट था, सब कुछ था, मेरे पसीने छूट गए कि अब मैं कैसे करूँगा, राइट? But he has been a veteran in this field, and he understands market dynamics and these factors. So he took to a chalkboard and he showed them the break even point of their technology, जिसको बोलते हैं, I always screw that, payback period. So he showed the payback period on the board with relevant and reasonable assumptions to be 3.5 to 4 years, which is a very nice payback period for a technology in the pharma sector especially.
कल में J दिखाया उन्होंने, तो they said कि normal J उतना है वो red वाला, और pharma में जो जाता है,
Yeah, the curve is going to be huge, significant.
very long period before you break even and then start.
Yeah, significant. तो उन्होंने ये दिखा दिया and the deal was struck. Third variant is the clot specific variant. जैसे तिवारी सर ने बताया था, it only targets the clot that is causing the issue, not generalized. That technology was transferred to Nostrum Medical, that's in the US, for $2 million USD at 5% royalty, right? So that tech transfer was milestone based. It was quite a few years ago, and yet the technology is not out even now, because like I said, like madam said, the J curve is going to be huge for pharma, right? It is still even now not in circulation in the market. However, that technology transfer was actually successful for $2 million. Now these are the very basic steps for valuation and pricing, starting from invention disclosure and IP protection to market analysis, to selecting the correct valuation approach for you. However, the valuation approaches I described, you don't need to select one. It is much better to have a mix and match to get to the closest answer, because valuation is more of an art than a science. You will never get to a correct number, because it's all estimation, it is guesstimation, तुक्का मार रहे हैं, maybe अंधेरे में नहीं, but to some degree there is guesswork involved, right? So you want to be as close in your assumptions to the real world as possible. Then आप licensing model ढूंढिए, royalty, upfront payment, whatever you like, whatever you think is most beneficial to you and the company also agrees. And go right ahead, monitor performance and revise terms if needed. The challenges here, like I mentioned, is first is that forecasting the future in any capacity is quite difficult. You need to have long historical data, and when you have unique products involved, historical data is generally absent. So you have to make guesswork. Sometimes a lot of guesswork, sometimes some amount of guesswork. But it is still quite difficult, and even seasoned veterans are not able to necessarily do it correctly every time. Market comparables may be hard to find, as well as the fact that a lot of these terms and conditions are confidential in nature. Best practice is to use multiple methods, realistic assumptions and scenario planning. Key takeaways, valuation is a multi-dimensional field which combines various methods. You want to get to the closest as much as you can by combining everything you have at your disposal. Pricing should reflect risk, market size, tech maturity. We discussed all of these factors. And flexibility and periodic review are critical. Flexibility is one more point that I will again emphasize. Like I said, with the technology of cheek retractor with light, flexibility was necessary for this technology to be transferred. Here, with the recombinant streptokinase strain, flexibility on the part of the company was very necessary. And flexibility is essentially here, if the inventors, Professor Manu for example, were keen on just recovering the 1 crore amount that the government had provided, this technology would very much may not have been transferred, let alone multiple times. So flexibility is a very, very necessary factor for each and every inventor as well as the company, as so long as you are able to convince them. I'll end on this particular note, flexibility. And questions, if you have any more, I'll be happy to take them.
We can have one or two.
Yes, please. I did cross the limit. Yeah.
It's all right.
Thank you.
Any quick questions? You have the man in front of you.
I think I was fortunate to have a good majority of questions during the session.
So you could engage them.
Yes, that was pretty nice. Thank you so much.
Flexibility is been referring, so it could vary from organization to organization as well. So at Punjab University, we have been very fortunate. Sir was also director, the Center for Industry Institute Partnership. So one, we have been at Punjab University. We have been like I would say unconventional. We started this cell way back in 1994. तब बहुत कम universities थी जिनके अपने rules and regulations in place. Then again we were very pro inventor. उसमें उस वक्त शुरू में we had a 50-50 partnership. Punjab University would get 50% of any consultancy or any tech transfer, and 50% would go to the inventor or the inventors depending upon the understanding. And then later on, I think अब भी 10-15 साल हो गए, 70-30 we moved to the 70-30 where 70% comes back to the inventor of whatever is जो भी earnings होती हैं या royalty आती है या जो भी है उसमें I think royalties में it is 80-20 also. I also need to look at that. So flexibility की जो बात है वो पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी of course अभी टेक एनर्जी सेंटर हमारे पास आ गया, but normally वो negotiations inventor ही करता है बड़ी बड़ी buyer के साथ. Inventor is not an expert. डर लगता है उसको अपने लिए मांगते हुए भी, लेकिन अभी आहिस्ता आहिस्ता अवेयरनेस हो रही है. बट यूनिवर्सिटी हैज बीन वेरी फ्लेक्सिबल. तुम जो भी मॉडल स्ट्राइक करो, वेदर इट इज टोटली one time payment or it is a milestone payment or it is a combination of milestones and royalties. So all those things can be looked at depending upon the status of the industry. So those things add to the chances of successful negotiation, but we all know in pharma it is another thing and you have other limitations to it. But at the same time, जैसे सर ने बोला इंडस्ट्री की अपनी लिमिटेशन होती हैं. हमारी जो वेयर वी आर प्लेस्ड टुडे इन चंडीगढ़, हमारे आसपास R&D बेस्ड इंडस्ट्रीज बहुत कम है. तो उसके लिए टू स्ट्राइक टेक ट्रांसफर्स और टू अप्रोच मल्टीनेशनल्स, वहाँ पे अलग तरह के इश्यूज हो जाते हैं. दे कैन इवन इफ यू साइन CDAs, they could still pick up your ideas because they have their well-developed R&Ds and their R&D can say हम बना लेंगे अपने आप.
They also tend to have a large legal unit that
Yes.
can just hammer away at your
Yeah,
patents.
their CDA is not very simple and you also have to read through the lines to sign that CDA, then any agreements which you do. And then उनके केस में R&D और somebody might feel, क्योंकि वो हमारी तरह सोचते हैं कि ये अच्छा प्रोडक्ट है, लेकिन उनका बिजनेस टीम क्या सोचता है, उनका मार्केटिंग टीम क्या सोचता है, वो एंटायरली एक डिफरेंट प्लान हो जाता है. तो तुम 6 महीने उनके साथ डिस्कशंस कर रहे हो एंड सडनली द बिजनेस रिव्यू टीम comes into picture and it says no, we are not interested in the product. So there are so many things which are playing, but at the same time we have to make ourselves aware. We should be able to at least work out the cost of our technology, है ना. और उस केस में हिम्मत रख के प्रोजेक्ट तो करो, बट डू योर होमवर्क दैट यू कैन जस्टिफाई. अगर कोई तुमसे पूछेगा, लेकिन कोई जस्टिफिकेशन के लिए पूछ रहा है तो मतलब वो
They are interested. They are interested. Yeah.
Somewhere, है ना, half ways, 2/3 ways, 1/3 ways, but they would meet you. That shows. तो उस केस में then you should be able to at least tell them, justify why you did. Like there has to be mathematics how you reached at that cost. Not कि 1 लाख सबको मिल जाएगा. Don't do that. But at that that time we were desperate कि चलो टेक्नोलॉजी जाए तो सही, लोगों तक पहुंचे तो सही. वो भी एक डेस्परेशन होती है साइंटिस्ट को, एक ड्रीम होता है कि मार्केट तक तो पहुंचे जो मैंने किया है. So that is another joy. So you can always strike balances depending on your callings. हर एक की अपनी अपनी कॉलिंग होती है और आहिस्ता आहिस्ता तुम लर्न भी करते हो. There should not be any regrets कि मैंने ऐसा क्यों कर दिया. You would get more chances. But do start somewhere. So thank you so much. And it was a lovely session और I'm sure हम सब ने बहुत कुछ सीखा इसमें से, and with the live examples definitely things get clearer. So we have a certificate. Sir, please do the honors. We have with us such a senior colleague and an expert.
Well done. फोटो में पता नहीं रहता किसको मिल रहा है. So normally मैं इशारा करता हूँ इसको मिल रहा है. मैं 1 मिनट दे दूँ सिर्फ इन पे.
हाँ
Just a minute.
बिल्कुल सर.
बेटे आपने एक्सक्लूसिव नॉन एक्सक्लूसिव बात सुनी है ना आपने, राइट? गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया कहती है कि जी आपने नॉन एक्सक्लूसिव देना है. ये जस्टिफाइड. तो मैं अपने दोस्त को ना दे दूँ, एक को दिया क्यों दिया, राइट? इंडस्ट्री ऑन द अदर साइड कहती है कि हमें एक्सक्लूसिव चाहिए, वो कंपटीशन ही चाहते हैं.
फार्मा में खास करके मैं दिस इज व्हाट आई वांटेड टू से.
बस जाता है साइंटिस्ट. आई नो कि एक इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट में टेक्नोलॉजी दी गई, दी भी रही थी, दे दी गई, और उनके अंदर राइवलरीज होती है. केस हो गया उस बेचारे के ऊपर, उसकी सारी जो पेंशन सारी रुक गई उसकी. अब कोई रिस्क नहीं लेता. सो कई बार चीजें, अब गवर्नमेंट अपनी जगह ठीक है, इंडस्ट्री अपनी जगह ठीक है, तो यही बताएंगे एक दूसरे करते कैसे.
So, जैसे कल मैम बता रहे थे हमें जोग्राफिकल एक्सक्लूजन भी कर सकते हैं हम, है ना, कि इंडिया के लिए है, या हम यू हैव अ पेटेंट विच इज़ अ वाइडर पेटेंट, सो यू कैन डू एक्सक्लूसिविटी कि डर्मा में मैं ये देती हूँ तुम्हें, बाकियों में नहीं होगा तुम्हारा, या एक्टिव स्पेसिफिक कर सकते हो, बिकॉज फार्मा में दे ऑलवेज वांट एक्सक्लूसिव. और अभी देयर इज अ नाउ इज आई थिंक अ वेरी राइट टाइम फॉर टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रांसफर्स, बिकॉज इवन द स्मॉल कंपनीज MSMEs दे वांट पेटेंट्स. उनको हाँ स्टार्टअप्स उनको पेटेंट्स चाहिए, IP चाहिए, IP प्रोटेक्टेड प्रोडक्ट चाहिए होता है, लेकिन उसमें वो क्योंकि अभी वो न्यू है एंड बड़ी बड़ी नॉन टेक्निकल लोग होते हैं जो इंडस्ट्री में होते हैं, तो उनको नॉन एक्सक्लूसिव बात समझ में नहीं आती. कहते नहीं हमें तो एक्सक्लूसिव ही चाहिए, हमें तो एक्सक्लूसिव ही चाहिए. तो फिर उनको कन्विंस करके कैसे तुम वो कर सकते हो, वो देखना पड़ेगा, है ना, हाउ यू आर एबल टू, बिकॉज दे आर नॉट एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड कि हाँ तुम क्या कह रहे हो, या तुम, इसीलिए उनको प्राइस नहीं तुम्हारी पता लगती, बिकॉज उनको नहीं पता लगता कितना उसमें इनपुट गया, है ना, चाहे सरकार का गया, लेकिन पैसे तो लगे हैं ना, तभी वो टेक्नोलॉजी रेडी हुई है. सो दे फील कि ले हमें तो ऐसे ही दे दो, पैसे क्यों मांग रहे हो इसके लिए, और एकेडमिशियन को तो बिल्कुल पैसे नहीं मांगने चाहिए. सो
कहते हैं आपको गवर्नमेंट ने पैसा दिया, पैसे भी आते हैं, तुम्हें गवर्नमेंट ने पैसा दिया है, तुम हमसे क्यों मांग रहे हो.
और टीचिंग प्रोफेशन इज ऑलवेज कंसिडर्ड टू बी अ नोबल प्रोफेशन. सो वो कहते हैं पैसे नहीं लेने चाहिए, लेकिन सर कह रहे हैं बहुत पैसे हैं टीचिंग में, रिसर्च में. सो बिल्कुल है, अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ हैं बहुत सारी, यू नीड टू गो एंड ग्रैब देम.
अनदर जो आपके पास टेक्नोलॉजीज हैं, मैम के पास हैं, सारी इंडस्ट्री नहीं ले रही बेटे, और मैम को मालूम है कि टेक्नोलॉजी में बहुत दम है. मैम तो ऑलरेडी प्रोफेसर है, तो बेटे टॉक टू मैम. मैम अगर मैं अपना स्टार्टअप लगा लूँ इसके ऊपर, ये विल दैट थॉट दो कि हम सेंटर जो है पेटेंट टेक्नोलॉजीज देके, IITs की बाकी सेंटर देके हम दे रहे हैं स्टूडेंट्स को, उनको टाइप करवा देते हैं कि बेटे अपना स्टार्टअप लगाइए. और 16 लोगों ने स्टार्टेड विद 116, 16 को हमने फंडिंग में दिया. आप प्लीज इनको ना वो चीज जो आपके पास है, आपकी फैकल्टी है, टॉक टू द टीचर्स.
So like there are so many opportunities, बस अपने कंफर्ट जोन में से बाहर निकलना है, बस that's it. डर के आगे जीत और अपनी कंफर्ट जोन से बाहर निकलना है.
Very good.
Thank you. और
That is also 2 hours.
Sorry?
2 hours का देते ना.
नहीं, 1 hour.
4 hours.
So we have a session with Varinder and Manuji for 2 hours.
अच्छा,
That is from 2 to 4. हाँ जी. हाँ जी. That's a tutorial.
और done lunch हो गया इनका?
नहीं sir, एक है अभी talk. We have another speaker with us and Bhavish is here. So we are running late,
Yeah, no
and
problem.
I'll request him to also squeeze in 45 minutes, and we'll meet for lunch. So Bhavish ji is here with us, and Mr. Bhavish Sood, he's a general partner at Modular Capital, which is a seed stage micro venture capitalist fund. So, and
Yeah,
he's
that's good, ma'am. In the interest of time.
नहीं बिल्कुल एंड लाइक ही इज IIM ग्रेजुएट सेंट जॉन्स के हैं मैं देख रही थी सो ही बिलोंग्स टू चंडीगढ़
Yeah, my both parents are also PU alums. Both scientists from PU.
राइट सो ही विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट
Father is no more. Subhash Nagal, he was in geology. Mother is a microbiologist. She was in PGI. In experimental biotechnology.
Experiment by.
ही इज अ माइक्रोबायोलॉजिस्ट
अच्छा, okay. So my both parents are scientists from PU.
So over to Bhavish ji.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to come to my parents' Alma. I didn't go to PU. I went to Manipal for my undergrad, then was in Bangalore. So, how many of you know what a VC does? Does anybody know? VC is the one who writes the check. So, VC से पैसा लेना तो बहुत आसान है, but I give a practical example. When you take money from a VC, it's like having your mother-in-law come live with you permanently. So I tell all the founders कि इस frame of mind को सोचो, and then can you tolerate your mother-in-law? हफ्ते भर के लिए भी you can all tolerate, but after that it's problematic. So the point is, the point I want to emphasize is you should take money only when it is needed. And typically you will find, like Prateek said, he made a brilliant point. You'll be surprised the amount of grants that are available today for R&D under various schemes, right? If it is BIRAC, then there is SFS. There are at least 5 or 6 schemes. State governments now have venture capital funds, or they have fund of funds, which are basically funds which invest in funds like me, and then I can give it to people like you. So I predominantly invest in deep tech, but I invest in deep tech software. So at Modular we've done, by the way, it's the only fund in North India apart from Delhi. It's the only fund. Chandigarh mein to bhul jao, but North mein bhi pura, this is the only fund. And I think it's not Chandigarh, it's just that I like to live here, that's why the fund is here. So we have investments in a lot of very interesting software companies in geospatial analytics, in digital twins, in 3D, AR, VR. So you name the sector, we probably have an investment. So what I wanted to talk about today is, and we'll keep it very interactive. How many of you are startup founders here? Any startup founders or budding founders? Anybody playing with an idea? Or you are mostly students who potentially think they want to become entrepreneurs, right? So one of the things which as long as you don't graduate with student debt, you have plenty of opportunities, and I think there are 2 schools of thought. People say work for a few years then become an entrepreneur. My view is slightly different, that when you graduate your ability to take a risk is far higher. Responsibilities come in there, ability to take a risk is much higher, right? Now when it comes to deep tech enterprises, what are some of the 2 or 3 things? For example, TRL, Prateek talked about TRLs. The classic problem we have in India is, if you look at in the US, now let's take space tech, which is the flavor of the season currently. You look at SpaceX. What comes to your mind when you look at SpaceX? I mean, you normally think of Elon Musk, but what comes to your mind when you think of something like SpaceX? What comes to your mind? Anyone? Come on, we'll have a more interactive session. ज्ञान तो तुम्हें अपनी क्लासेस में भी मिलता है. Astronauts, that comes to your mind.
In the future.
Ha, that's a great point. That's a very good memory recall. But you know, when you look at the feasibility of how something like that has happened, and you take this to the Indian context, what comes to your mind? What are some of the challenges that you can potentially think of? कि वहाँ पे NASA did not send a rocket, SpaceX sent, but when if you read Elon Musk's biography, you look at how he thought about building. He even went to Russia to buy rockets. This is an American citizen, a naturalized American citizen going to Russia to find rockets. But eventually what happened? NASA started giving out grants as part of its own commercial endeavors, and that is how Blue Origin, SpaceX, and some of the other companies, RocketX, which came out of New Zealand, now is in the US. That's how some of these companies started to progress. So what comes to your mind? That there is a commercial entity like NASA which is there. Now if you fast forward that scenario to India, ISRO does not have the commercial entity to build that. So what does that leave you with? You are at the mercy of people like me who will write you a check. Or you are at the mercy of a government grant to help you build. But commercialization of deep tech in India is very, very hard. Very, very hard. And it's across a range. So what happens in Indian context is, based on your TRLs, you do not get the funding. So typically you will have to commercialize immediately after prototyping. So you have to be very aware of the Indian context. Now deep tech compared to, let's say, I'll give you an interesting statistic. So we were doing some analysis. So I think this analysis is about 2 years old. So when you look at, you all order from Swiggy, or you probably use Paytm, right? So you know what are the top 5 consumer brands in India, right? You have Paytm, you have Swiggy, you have Zomato, right? So how much do you think in 2023 they have raised? Let's say the total raise environment that year in 2023 was $20 billion. It was actually $21 billion. So $21 billion roughly is about 1000 crore के आसपास, not 1000, 10,000 crore के आसपास, 20,000 crore के आसपास, roughly, ठीक है? So how much do you think these 5 companies have raised? 20,000 crore में से कितना raise किया होगा इन 5 कंपनियों ने? Just make a random guess, anyone. 50%. Who said that? You said that, okay. हाँ, anyone else? Anyone else? Ma'am, you wanted to give an answer. 15,000 crore. हाँ, 75%, ठीक है. Anyone? तुक्के मार रहे हैं, random तुक्के हैं. किसी को क्या पता डेटा क्या है? Very good तुक्का. Exactly that number. So 5 companies in the consumer tech have raised equivalent of what the entire deep tech and software sector has raised. So what does that tell you? Pareto का नाम सुना? Pareto सुना 80-20? That is what it is. Power law. These 5 companies have taken 50% of the capital that is available. अब पूरे डीप टेक सेक्टर, पूरे सेक्टर के लिए बाकी सारा पैसा बचा हुआ है, उसी में आप सबने अपने वेंचर्स बनाने हैं. सो वेरी टफ, वेरी वेरी टफ. The other thing you need to keep in mind is the third thing. So we talked about why based on the TRLs you might not get funding, you will get some grants. My observation of grants, and I sit on several of these grant committees, at least with a lot of universities, at least 5 or 6 of those. What I have observed is that the grants are also not adequate for the deep tech sector. That is one. The other thing which I want to tell a lot of founders who come from a scientific background, so one of my favorite areas which I've seen is some people like you, microbiologists, who come across, who build very interesting pharmaceutical products, and these are more dermatology oriented, and they have unique IP. But what is the mistake they want to do? They want to build an end-to-end brand. They want to build a brand, they want to do research, they want to do commercialization, and they want to do distribution. Not possible. The smarter thing to do is find somebody who's willing to license the IP.
Exactly.
Per tube pay, whatever is available, take it. So,
Yeah.
huh? हाँ मैम कर रही हैं अच्छा ओके वेरी गुड हाँ सो व्हाई इज दैट बेटर व्हाई इज दैट बेटर मैम हैज फुल प्रोफेसरशिप हेयर शी इज ऑन अ टेन्योर ट्रैक हेयर शी हैज अ नाइस बंगलो ई और एफ सीरीज में इन पी यू
No, no, it's G series.
जी सीरीज
Next vice chancellor.
नेक्स्ट वाइस चांसलर चलो वेरी गुड या मैम इज डीन आई फॉरगेट माय मदर ऑल्सो ग्रू अप ऑन द कैंपस सो आई एम वेरी फेमिलियर विद द हाउसिंग लेआउट्स सो
I think it's a niche area which I have
It-
expertise in.
certainly.
And we can't venture into other areas.
Yeah, but there are, I have known of incidents where professors have also left. When you look at deep tech in the space tech, IIT Madras Research Park has professors who have maybe 2 or 3, I would say, nearing to be unicorn kind of companies, including Agnikul. So, I also want to emphasize that the professor-student collaboration from a commercialization perspective is also something very interesting. Because the students have the energy, the teachers have the expertise and the R&D know-how, which the deep tech expertise needs. और उसका ये नहीं मतलब कि प्रोफेसर को 80% दे दिया स्टेक और अपने लिए 20% रख लिया, वो भी नहीं करना. यू हैव टू नेगोशिएट हार्ड. ठीक है, प्रोफेसर होंगे आप सर, कॉलेज में बाहर मिलेंगे बरिस्टा में, अब आप बताओ व्हाट विल यू ब्रिंग टू द टेबल.
Bring to the table.
हाँ, what you will bring to the table. But I personally think that's a potent combination. Now let's say you had somebody in the School of Management here, and you know he has expertise working for Lakme or Imami, and he says, ma'am, I'll take your product and we'll do full service. We'll become full stack. That is a model. But I would say the licensing, and Pratik talked about the commercial models, he talked about licensing regimes and how do you track that. That I think is a brilliant option for a lot of the science people, especially those who are on the R&D track. I would also emphasize on that. The reason for that is, like I have mentioned in the deck, they require typically deep tech ventures require 3 to 5 times more money than some of the other startups, because the commercialization also takes time. Now what typically happens is a fund has a life cycle of 10 years. उस 10 year एक fund life cycle में पैसा raise करके deploy करके growth करनी है. Now that honestly is not possible in deep science. How many of your research projects, ma'am, have probably at TRL 3 from the last 5, 7, 10 years, right? Several years. So the fund, that's the other issue. The fund life cycle does not fit well with deep science. And you know, the regulators at the funds, which is people like SEBI and all, they also have this challenge that they don't give fund extensions. So you have picked up money and you have to give a return in a certain period of time. So how do fund returns work? I think it's important for you to understand my side of the business model also, so that you understand how we give valuations, how we return the money and how we make money. A fund manager will make 20% of the return. आपने 100 रुपए की कंपनी बेची तो 20 रुपए मेरे को मिलेंगे, आपने 1 रुपए की बेची तो मुझे कुछ नहीं मिलेगा. So basically a fund has to return 3.2 times before I can make any money. अगर मैंने 1 का 3.25 नहीं किया, I will not make money. So by business model you need to understand why, because you will need to understand कि मैं आपको कब पैसे दे सकता हूँ, because you all think that you have a very innovative idea, but reality में it might not fit with my business model. अगर मुझे लगेगा ये commercialization 10 या 12 साल है, I cannot, मतलब even if I like the idea, I will not be able to do it, right? So what is the workaround to this? The workaround is obviously grants. The idea is to work with more R&D intensive, where you can leverage your professors. You can do all of that. So critical to do that. Important to understand that. Now, one of the things which you ask most of, when I go for these lectures, I get to ask is, अगर आप इसको डीप टेक के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखोगे, सीड स्टेज में टिपिकली यू विल गेट, इंडिया में अगर आप देखोगे एनीवेयर बिटवीन 1 to 5 crores, प्लस यू कैन गेट सम नॉन डाइल्यूटिव ग्रांट्स. ओके, और उसमें एक चीज़ याद रखना कि जो पैसा है, इफ़ यू वांट टू पिक मनी, मनी इज ओनली गिवन टू अ प्राइवेट लिमिटेड, नीदर पार्टनरशिप नॉर LLP, नॉट अ रजिस्टर्ड पार्टनरशिप. इन तीनों एंटिटीज में पैसा सिर्फ प्राइवेट लिमिटेड में मिलता है. A venture capital will, acha, grants you can get in an LLP, but you can't get venture funds. So in a lot of these schemes of the grants are getting more and more tough. So don't be very cagey about dilution in the initial stages, because if you don't have the money, your idea is in any case not going to fly. So you need the capital. So उसका ये नहीं मतलब कि आप you take 50, give away 50% of the company. At each of these stages, expect between 15 to 22 to 25% dilution in every round. अगर आप IPO पे देखो या typically in an IPO stage you look at the founders, that will typically have about 15 to 20% in aggregate. मतलब अगर 2 या 3 founders हैं, they all at an IPO stage typically will have between 15 to 20%. There are some exceptions where founders have held more than 50%, but those are far, those are not very easy to come across.
Normally एक funding के लिए कितना क्यों % के लिए negotiate करना चाहिए?
15 से 22.
Funder के लिए?
नहीं आप total
15 से 22 is the total number, right?
total number for the round, for the round.
Somebody yesterday we had somebody on strategizing and he mentioned that
हाँ.
you have to raise funds very frequently
हाँ.
initially. शुरू में 3-4 बार आपको fund raising करनी पड़ेगी.
तो typically मैम what I recommend people is कि आप you look at the whole plan. कि what is the amount you need for about 24 months, let's assume, और उस amount से आप 20% dilution calculate कर लो. That is the most practical thing you can think of.
और उसके accordingly
हाँ,
different.
क्योंकि आप valuation वरना आप see what happens is space tech में for example you need to have higher valuation. Why? Because your milestones require larger capex. So what will happen if you start diluting for very small amounts, then it's a bit of an issue.
तो फिर उस केस में smaller amounts के लिए debt funds लेने चाहिए.
Debt funds मैम कैश फ्लो पे मिलते हैं, वरना नहीं मिलते. वो debt funds work for consumer.
Funding तो जब भी आएगी
हाँ.
कोई share
अगर आप डीप टेक फंड्स देखो इंडिया में देयर इज अ सिवियर पॉसिटी ऑफ डीप टेक फंडिंग, सिवियर बोथ फ्रॉम. हाँ जी, हाँ डीप टेक नाउ ऑफिस ऑफ द साइंटिफिक एडवाइजर हु इज आल्सो अ PU alum. हाँ and Sood also. So I think he's a physicist, right? So they are, I think there is a 10,000 crore allocation, but अगर आप reality में देखोगे these schemes take multi years to actually come down and percolate, because they need cabinet approval, and then a bank is appointed as an entity. There's a nodal bank. Typically it is either SIDBI and Canara Bank has had a fund of fund, but allocation when it starts to percolate, typically between the announcement and this thing you will see that there is a 12-month cap, and when you actually start doing a withdrawal of capital also, then you will also see that there is a bit of a challenge, right? So when you look at a deep tech venture, I've kind of mentioned it here, but what do they look for? They look for expertise. So proven expertise in the deep tech space. So I'll give you an example. We invested in a deep tech AI company. What did we see? One of the founders had a PhD from IIT Delhi and she had done her postdoc. And the other husband had a more technical background, but he had the ability to run, build. So what do we need? A balance of commercial and technical acumen. So commercial acumen ho jayega, but you don't have product and deep science background, what will happen? The product will not get rolled out. Or you will be dependent on employees and you will get taken for a ride. If you have too much deep tech, then you have no ability to commercialize. So finding that balance, the VCs look for that. I go to several of these IITs, we go to triple IITs also, same problem. Very heavily leaning towards either AI or on the product. Just because you have built something, people will not come and see, buy it. अगर दिल्ली वालों को पता नहीं है ना कि आगरा में ताजमहल है, कोई नहीं आएगा देखने. No one will come. So it's very important to build the commercialization. Now product market fit in deep science na, that has a very different, in every deep science fair it has a different connotation. अगर आप software deep tech में लो, PMF is typically means $1 million in revenue in one segment, and that you have a repeatable motion of being able to sell in that segment. अगर आप चैटबॉट बना रहे हो and the chatbot is replacing call center workers, so इसका ये नहीं मतलब आपने कहीं और बेच दिया और you have another 500,000, that is product market fit. So the ability to replace a call center worker with that reaching a $1 million in revenue, that is what is called a product market fit. Now in deep science, those are biosystems and deep tech in, let's say, space tech have very different milestones. And usually you will find in the first 7 to 8 years, those are very research oriented milestones. But they are all towards a focus on commercialization and launch. Those are important things to do. We talked about it. Deep tech ventures burn 2 to 3 times more money, obviously because वो R&D intensive है. And one of the things we also see with deep tech is they also need more money for experimentation. They also need more money for prototyping because things fall. Certain tests don't calibrate or work out the way they have to. I'll give you an example. Let's take the AI race. That AI race, India is not even in the running. Even in the US now, what happened there? US maybe they are using Chinese models in AI. Why do you think? Any AI person here? Anybody who's interested in AI? Anyone here? Or somebody who's keeping track? Yeah. Why do you think the Chinese models are working out well? Inferencing cost हो सकती है cheaper. But what else? But why are they being? What did China do as a geopolitical strategy which had a serious impact on the American AI strategy? What did they do? Government, but they released open source models. Now you would, DeepSeek and all. So you would argue that even the Meta models, the Facebook models are open source. But are they truly open source? They're not. Why? Because they don't publish weights. So what happened? It was actually a commercial hit on the US AI industry where the Chinese models started releasing the weights, which means you can calibrate the model based on your requirement. So if you want to analyze protein structures, you assign a different weight to it in your lab. Now with the American models, you couldn't do that. As a result, what has happened? A lot of the American software companies have started consuming Chinese models because they can calibrate it to their requirement. Now, given the kind of engineers we produce and the kind of R&D facilities we have, we should have been the third also ran in the whole capability set, but that has happened. So we are actually in a lot of the capabilities we are fairly behind. We talked about this that in India, in spite of a lot of the schemes, I think Piyush Goyal heavily jolted the industry in the right manner few months ago, where he said we need to stop building consumer apps and start going on the deep science. But reality is we have the R&D infrastructure, we have the educational institutes, we have institutes of eminence, but not easy to, we don't have commercialization capital available for either transfer of technology or even building venture scale companies out of that. That is not possible. And I give again the space tech example. There is a military industrial complex in the US who can buy space tech from space tech startups. There is NASA who has a commercialization angle, but we don't have the equivalent in India. So when you look at deep tech ventures, purely from VC's perspective, why they haven't been funding a lot of ventures in India, especially here, it's basically 3 things. One is the commercialization. We talked about it. Some of these things take 7 to 8 years even to see the light of the day and have the ability to reflect. That obviously is a problem. The second is exit track record. I have a 10-year fund life cycle. How do I find a way to how do I find a way to exit that? That's an issue. And obviously the technical risk assessment. So, when we look at, we invite scientists like you and, we read papers, but there is a serious gap in terms of trying to understand the commercialization possible. Now in deep science, the scientist has no idea because he's focused on the deep science solving the problem. The VCs have no idea because they cannot be experts in 10 fields also. So there are not experts available whether how this will plan out in the future. The pharmaceutical industry is a great example. You know, they are also governed by power law. One molecule, $1 billion. But they do multiple experiments to reach that one molecule. I've also briefly highlighted this, the missing business co-founder. So if you build a deep science venture, please find somebody who you can help commercialize, and he should be able to articulate the value proposition of what you are doing. That is also very critical. So typically I've seen this with tech, they'll find a very salesy person, but he has no ability to understand what the value proposition of what the software is trying to do or the problem you're trying to solve. That also becomes an issue. So business co-founder, but with deep understanding of the domain. And this is a very major problem. The scientists talk in their language, the VCs don't understand that. Now if you come and tell me I have published a paper in Nature, it's all Greek to me. I do know that Nature is prestigious, I'll give you some credibility for that. And if you say I have published in these many peer level, but will that help me write a check for you? The answer is no. We talked about this. The basic idea is if you can find grants to build your prototypes, that is the right thing to do. And there are enough number of grants available. The issue with grants is I think grants are today restricted or available between 25 to 50 lakh kind of a range typically, and you can only get one grant from one of the schemes, you can't go for two.
You can get in
Crores also.
2 to 3 crores.
But the
Success rate is very low. Yeah. I know, for example, some of the IITs now, like IIT Ropar has a 200 crore fund, so now they can give a slightly 400 crores.
One project is 400 crores,
Haan,
another is 120 crores.
crores, yeah. So they have large.
Punjab University, we don't get such funds. We are a state university.
Uh,
But we are doing very well.
you are a state university or you have a central?
We are
We
a
are
state.
something.
हम ना धोबी का कुत्ता ना घर का ना घाट.
Interstate university.
So I thought the vice president was the visiting fellow here, right?
Yes, the vice president is our chancellor.
Chancellor. हाँ.
Problem है कि भी हम है state university में, we are interstate university.
Interstate. Okay. हाँ.
Understand?
They
हाँ.
university.
Yeah.
I call myself a they university.
चलो.
Seeking discounts, seeking funds.
But yes, when you go to DST and other places, they think we are a separate university.
So among the things which I'm going to just take another 5 minutes. Now, what are the things that need to do is basically speak human, not scientists. You know, the articulation of what problem you are solving. You know, typically you will find that the people who are more successful are able to articulate in very simplistic terms. Because you know, let's face it, the people who are writing you a check, the people who are trying to commercialize it, they will not understand that. The other thing I tell them is not relevant for again some of the fields in deep tech, but especially in the AI side of deep tech or the emerging tech, it's possible that you can convert your pilots into more paid customers. That should be a heavy emphasis. Making sure that you know you first get pilots, you get paid pilots, and then you are able to convert them to customers. Very important to do that because these are all confidence building schemes in the mind of the VC. When I see that you have pilots, then I see you have whether you have paid or unpaid pilots, and then they're converting it to customers, or the customers are saying, you get me this XYZ functionality, or show me as part of your roadmap, then you know I'll be willing to write you a check.
Can you elaborate what is a paid pilot?
Paid pilot is where you know. So typically, what happens is you build something and you say, I think this is the problem it can solve. Typically, with startups, the buyers of technology who are using it, they will say, I will, you can do a free pilot. In a paid pilot, you actually pay for the whole customization and contextualizing. That's the difference.
So, अगर मैं pharma के context में सोचूं,
हाँ.
तो pilot is something I have
It
a
could,
technology and build a product.
pilot in your case would be a clinical trial.
Clinical trial or getting it
हाँ.
manufactured, scale
हाँ,
up उसका मैं.
scale, हाँ. You could do that. You can say, I have brought out.
लार्ज स्केल से पहले कुछ पायलट स्केल स्टडी
Preclinical would not fall in weight basket.
In the US, you would get a grant. In the Indian context, you'll unfortunately few stages have to be integrated, mashed into it. Yeah, I'm glad Pratik is agreeing with me. वो इंडिया में ना सब धंधे वाले हैं, वो मतलब they need to see a return, which is good and bad both. The bad part is when you look at the AI race, we failed because of this attitude. Because we are all carpenters, ना, हमें architect बनना ही नहीं है. And the AI race was all about being an architect.
So, जो layman term में you have to put across, तो वहाँ पे not the numbers of the business development, numbers in the sense कि हाँ इसकी इतनी market है इस product की, या through those numbers है.
So I know Pratik talked about the TAM SOM SAM model. So the only thing I have to add to what Pratik said was, हम क्या करते हैं, we take the TAM and we say we'll be able to hit 1% of that, and that's then 10,000 crore. That's actually not going to be the reality. So the SAM model has to tie in with your go-to-market model. What that means is कि अगर मैं एक आपने let's say you brought out an ointment for certain skin problem, you have to say there are 10,000 chemists. Out of that, I'll be able to target 200 in the first year.
So I'm talking of a geographical region.
It could be
as well as
yeah.
because, chemistry
Basically,
will be
it depends on one, how many you are able to produce. Second, how many doctors are able to prescribe. Third, how many chemists are you able to reach from a supply chain perspective. That is SAM. Not the ability to say कि 10,000 की 1% में ले गया तो 100 करोड़ का business हो गया पहले साल में. That is not the case. That is what VCs catch on to. Yeah, these are basically we talked about. Now, the interesting part about deep tech ventures is when they scale far better than any of the other segments. Probably next to consumer tech. And there is another example. When you look at the consumer tech, typically you will find that there are duopolies being established. So you have a Swiggy and Zomato. There is no third also ran. Even at a city level, you will not find a third also ran. Deep tech में वो power law इतना extreme नहीं है. Consumer में there is an Uber and a Rapido, or typically you will find Uber and Ola. You will find there are duopolies in each of these sectors. Deep tech में you can get far better outcomes, and you can have multiple crores in niches, which is possible because there is enough commercialization available in very specific areas also. That is the thing. The other thing we've seen from data, and this data is all PitchBook data, which I'm talking about. There is a valuation premium also because of the R&D side. You will find that the valuation of deep tech ventures are 3 to 4 times of typically other companies, because they get why is that the case? Because VCs understand that there is defensibility and moat. It is a 10-year period that another company will take to catch up to that. So they are willing to pay that premium for that defensibility because they know other person will take few years to do that. So that's the other advantage with deep science, which is not easy to do. So with that, I'm right on time actually. We have time for questions.
Yes.
Yeah. Another 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions.
Come on, ask. Future startups, और जैसे पहले प्रतीक ने बोला low risk and like high risk taking capacity. So what about the older generation? मेरे जैसे लोग जो retire होने वाले हैं.
No, you have to mentor the students on their R&D.
दोनों हैं.
I think age is not a defining criteria, but actually deep science startups cannot happen without scientists like you. It's just humanly not possible. Because you know instinctively what will work in a laboratory environment, which will not. That is the edge you bring.
Plus, I was reading somewhere that the integrity to any deep tech startup and कोई जिसके लिए आएगा उसमें भी वो चाहिए थी.
I told you the startup I invested in. It was only because the lady had a PhD and a postdoc in the AI field. So I knew, and that's exactly how it has turned out to be. That is now my fund returner.
So, but you say that the team has to be a mix of a
हाँ,
technical person and a
so they
financial expert.
had that.
जो आप कर रहे हो, that's kind of a deep tech.
हाँ, they had that, and they had a paid pilot with a large automotive company.
जो ये कर रहे हैं, deep tech is just a name.
Like,
Yeah.
why doesn't one go for a bank loan instead of going to a VC?
Bank loans you don't get in non-cash flow companies. So the only reason why because it's high risk capital. But banks have now started becoming limited partners. So limited partners are investors who invest in the fund. So some of the banks have started doing that now. But bank unless you have profitable for a year or two, you don't get bank money. There are certain schemes where for unprofitable also you can get certain like CGT SME, which is half the government take the risk, but half underwriting is done by the bank. उसमें भी it is very hard because government का underwriting तो आपको मिल जाता है because they want to promote employment and they want the government is very astute. They understand this is the only place now which will raise employment. They understand that. That is why you see the Prime Minister so focused on the startup side. Because this is the only sector which has ability to do mass employment. It's not manufacturing, it's not services anymore. Young graduating kids like this demographic dividend we have sitting right here, they are not going to work in conventional industries. Huh? Opportunities bhi nahi hai. That's why there is a lot of focus on startups. And startups typically require risk capital.
Skill India movement, that website is there, so that is good.
Skill India is more for junior. But yeah, it's important because you have to bring informal people also to the formal labor. See what happens is, sir, I'll come to you. What happens is as the country progresses, starts becoming wealthy, the lower end of the jobs nobody wants to do. That's why you also see this immigration from Nepal and Bangladesh happening. It's actually, I look at that in a positive sign. Ki my own workforce is getting trained for doing higher end jobs.
मैं जो कह रहा था अभी, we are talking about deep tech नहीं है. In fact, even basic AI जो है,
हाँ जी,
वो भी बहुत ज़्यादा
नहीं है sir. I'm in complete agreement with you.
But the reason is कि I am one of the experts with STPI.
हाँ जी, मौली में.
Right? I'm a biotechnologist.
हाँ जी,
Not much knowledge, literally no knowledge about AI.
right.
पर वहाँ भी just to let you know, फंड्स देने पड़ते हैं आपको 20 lakhs.
हाँ,
वो भी कई बार होता है कि यार दिस इज नॉट अप टू द मार्क, कुछ भी नहीं है इसमें. अगर वो फंड ना दे तो एसटीपीआई पे पैसा गवर्नमेंट बंद कर देगी.
वो स्कीम वो हाँ.
बड़े सब स्टैंडर्ड प्रोग्राम्स इवन इन एआई आ रहे हैं. पर्सन लाइक मी कैन मेक आउट हियर, इसमें कुछ नहीं है.
बिल्कुल.
कुछ नहीं है. व्हाट टू टॉक ऑफ
Deep tech. Sir, I 100% agree with you. Now let's look at AI in your field. Biotechnologist, आजकल तो math वाला person will be a better biotechnologist today.
इंडिया में बायोटेक्नोलॉजी फार्मा जो है बहुत बढ़िया है.
हाँ.
But what to say is the gap between these people and their exposure to the commercial end.
हाँ.
When we talk about US में क्या है कि भी वहाँ पर एक professor can have his industry also.
हाँ.
He can be director of 5 companies as well.
बिल्कुल.
तो
बिल्कुल.
यहाँ नहीं है. यहाँ पर प्रोफेसर की सैलरी इज फिक्स. वहाँ पर सैलरी फिक्स नहीं है बेटे उसकी.
You raise your own salary.
हाँ, for your own research projects.
आपने कुछ कमाना है, प्रोजेक्ट्स लेकर आने हैं, उसे कुछ सैलरी इंस्टीट्यूट की देनी है, बाकी आपकी. मैंने 8 लेक्चर्स लेने हैं, 10 लेक्चर्स लेने हैं इन ए वीक. मेरी ड्यूटी खत्म यूनिवर्सिटी के साथ.
हाँ.
मैं कुछ भी करूँगा.
हाँ, and they
घोड़े अलग हैं यहाँ पर आकर.
तो यहाँ
they only teach 12 credits per year.
What he said, घोड़े and गधे is a social system. नहीं जाते हम, पर हमें ये चीज़ जो आप कह रहे हैं, इंटेलिजेंस से कम नहीं है. हम ही लोग वहाँ जाके पढ़ाते हैं.
हाँ.
राइट. सिलिकॉन वैली हमसे भरी हुई है. राइट. 12% डॉक्टर्स इंडियंस ही हैं वहाँ पर. कॉमन कुछ भी के सब निकल आए तो क्रैश हो जाएगा सारा. बट जो चीज़ें हमारे यहाँ पर नहीं है, टीचर्स को भी ओपन करो ना. इसलिए वो सीखेगा कमर्शियल एंगल. जब उसकी तो सैलरी फिक्स कर दी, हाँ जितना ही आगे सर्टिफिकेट मिल जाएगा, हम ताड़ियाँ मार देंगे, इससे ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं करना. So that is behind that, but you people are very intelligent. You are in this university, maybe from some other universities also. पर बेटे आप में बहुत टैलेंट है. So look into the startup aspect. Look at the startup aspect. अगर परमिट करें कि एक अलग सेशन लगा देंगे कि व्हाट इज इन्वॉल्व इन बिकमिंग ए स्टार्टअप, आपको जो है ना आइडिया नहीं है। सो हम प्रोग्राम्स करते हैं, 6 मंथ प्रोग्राम स्टार्टिंग 1 फ्रॉम August 1, okay, just October 1, to give you an idea कि बेटे स्टार्टअप क्या है, will handhold you till you are up there, आपको इन्वेस्टर से मिला दिया, पैसे मिल गए, जहाँ भी आपको जरूरत होगी, so he is a part of that, Pratik is part of that, और भविष्य की का तो मुझे भी पता लगा है, so we'll talk to you.
हाँ जी सर।
So look into this aspect, जो सर ने कहा ना कि अगर आप बीटेक या एमएससी या एमफार्मा के बाद आपके पास रिस्क का चांस है बड़े 1-2 साल गोइंग फॉर स्टार्टअप, एक्सपीरियंस लो उसके अंदर अच्छा चल गया तो गुड इनफ, नहीं है तो यू कैन कम बैक, और अगर आप इंडस्ट्री में चले गए कुछ और जॉब के लिए देन यू आर कमिंग बैक, वो शायद मुश्किल हो जाएगा।
नौकरी लगी हुई छोड़नी मुश्किल हो जाती है।
हाँ।
So what is the difference between a startup and a spin-off? I don't know, it may sound a stupid question,
हाँ.
but
Spin-off, what happens is spin-off is from an existing company. Let's say they found something more interesting and they have the ability to raise money in that, or they think that entity will, as a commercial entity, will do better than the combined entity, then a spin-off happens.
and क्या एक startup केवल licensing भी कर सकती है?
बहुत होती है. Actually, US is full of, but हाँ उसके लिए फिर वो you also need to have patent protection muscle.
IPO and वो
I have a startup in the geospatial analytics space that went down.
से लेके 7-8 तक आपके पास
हाँ,
टेक्नोलॉजी
हाँ.
so you just pitch your, but वहाँ पे भी तुम्हें टीम चाहिए फाइनेंस वाली और वो सब,
वो मार्केट में there is enough. That ecosystem now in the Indian market is well established.
so you hire a strategist and a
हाँ, but there are plenty of people to advise. हाँ.
टेक के पास अपनी टीम बना ली है, एंजल इन्वेस्टर्स की टीम है और जो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, वेंचर कैपिटलिस्ट हैं, वो सारा नहीं कॉमन है, you don't worry about that, ठीक है। So वेंचर कैपिटल पैसा देखना होता है कि हाउ टू कन्विंस दैट, बाकी अलग डोमेन से होता है कि उन्होंने किसी में लगाना, वेंचर कैपिटलिस्ट की भी तो होता है ना कि मैंने इसी फील्ड में लगाना।
अगर सिर्फ लाइसेंसिंग की करनी है तो ज़्यादा पैसे भी नहीं चाहिए, फिर उसके इसमें क्या क्या हम पैसे,
And that you always focus on the R&D, na? You just graduate to doing something else.
Licensing, I mean, you want to sell off your startup की बात कर रहे हो?
स्टार्टअप के अंदर अगर मैं अपनी टेक्नोलॉजी से
License from the university itself.
नहीं, जब आपका स्टार्टअप हो गया है तो यूनिवर्सिटी ने परमिट कर दिया है कि यू कैन हैव योर स्टार्टअप, तो हाँ बस वो जो पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू देगा कि जो स्टार्टअप बेस्ड इन पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी है उसके साथ टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस, वी कैन लुक इनटू दैट, बट एक ही स्टार्टअप यहाँ बैठा है, आपने पैसे दिए उसके लिए, वो दैट चैम्बर नथिंग बियॉन्ड, सारा कुछ स्टार्टअप है।
Any quick questions? You have people right here वो कभी नहीं
Yes,
मिलेंगे?
I think there's somebody at the back. Right. Great question. So, when a fund manager invests ना, एक टेक्निकल टर्म हम यूज़ करते हैं, व्हाट इज़ कॉल्ड अ रिटर्न द फंड कैलकुलेशन. ठीक है, तो यू आर ऑल फेमिलियर विद द 80-20 रूल, पैरेटो रूल होता है. तो उस पैरेटो रूल में क्या होता है कि इफ़ आई इन्वेस्ट इन 10 कंपनीज, उसमें टिपिकली 2 चलेंगी, 6 एवरेज होंगी और 2-4 बंद हो जाएंगी. ठीक है, तो इसमें हम 2 चीज़ें करते हैं. व्हाट वी डू इज़ वी मेंटेन अ मिनिमम. सो अगर मैं 1 करोड़ दे रहा हूँ, टिपिकली आई विल टेक अ 10% स्टेक. उसमें ये है कि ये 10% की वैल्यूएशन 2 कंपनियों में इतनी बढ़ जाएगी कि इट कैन रिटर्न माई एंटायर फंड. ओके, सो लाइक आई सेड, अगर मैंने 1 रुपया लगाया तो आई हैव टू रिटर्न दैट एज 3.25 रुपये. ओनली देन आई विल मेक मनी. सो दिस इज वन कैलकुलेशन which I will look at it from a valuation ownership perspective. तो मैं कंपनी को कभी भी वैल्यूएट करूँगा कि यार इसमें कितना ले सकता हूँ, इसका क्या सिनारियो होगा, कैसे ग्रो करेगी. दैट इज़ वन कैलकुलेशन. देन देर आर दी ओनली मेट्रिक्स, बिकॉज आई इन्वेस्ट इन द अर्ली स्टेज प्री सीड एंड सीड इन्वेस्टमेंट. तो उसमें फाउंडर इज अबाउट 50% ऑफ द क्वालिफाइंग क्राइटेरिया, एंड अनदर आई वुड से अबाउट 25 इज द मार्केट. आप क्या बना, अगर आप मेरे पास अभी आओ और मेरे को बोलो यार I want to build a Swiggy just for Chandigarh, you will not get money, because the market has already voted for the winner there. So 50% criteria on the founder, 25% on the market and 25% is on ability to build a business, how attractive is that sector, उस सेक्टर में आगे लेट स्टेज डील्स हो रही हैं कि नहीं हो रही, प्राइवेट इक्विटी का पैसा आ रहा है, बिकॉज मेरे को भी किसी को एग्जिट करना है लेटर ऑन. सो दीज आर द सेट ऑफ फैक्टर्स विच वी टिपिकली ऑब्जर्व.
Any other questions? Come on. You may not get such experts this say. कुछ भी क्वेश्चन जो मन में है. You want to ask something? नहीं? You want to go for lunch?
So thank you everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bhavesh ji, and I'm grateful to Guru to have suggested you. And मैंने जब बुलाया था तो मुझे नहीं पता था ऐसे वाले experts मेरे पास आ रहे हैं. So I'm really, pleased and delighted to have people like you. Thank you so much, and we will stay in touch. और आप सब लोग को भी मैं भावेश जी की तरफ से अपनी तरफ से बोल रही हूँ कि even if subsequently you have questions, maybe we can connect with him and talk to him specifically. Yeah, so thank you so much everyone, and now we can quickly go for lunch and get back at 2, and we have a certificate, sir.
Give me a big hand, boss.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll move for lunch
हाँ जी,
to the
हाँ.
university guest house.
Across the road ना, guest
हाँ
house?
जी, across the road.